afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. I am Dustin from Wiiisdom, and I am joined by my amazing colleagues, Alex and Jeremy. So welcome, everyone. Please do go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from. We always love to know who's joining us for events like this. Also, please be sure to stay until the very end of our session today. We are going to actually be doing a giveaway, and we'll let you know how to enter that. Totally free to enter, but we're going to be giving away a book that is called Competing on Analytics. We want you to be competitive with analytics at your organization. That's part of why we're here today. So be sure to stay to the end for that giveaway, which we'll do live along with our Q&A to follow. So let us know your questions as we're going through the presentation. At this point, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremy Blaney, who is our Vice President of Product Marketing, who is going to walk through the first half of our session this morning.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you, Dustin. Welcome to a special encore of our TC23 session, Automated Testing and Governance. Wait, what? In case you're wondering, there are 9 A's in the word what. We clearly did not want to be outdone with the 3 I's in the Wiiisdom name. Like Dustin said, my name is Jeremy Blaney, and I am the VP of Product Marketing here at Wiiisdom. Before my time at Wiiisdom, I worked at Tableau for many years. Most recently, I led content development and go-to-market strategy for Tableau Blueprint. As Dustin just said, I am joined by 2 of my wonderful colleagues, Dustin Shimmick, Alex Wheeler. Gentlemen, do you want to do a quick hi, hello, introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. So thank you, everybody. I'm Alex Wheeler, and I lead the pre-sales team here at Wiiisdom. Before coming here, I was at Tableau for many years, just like Jeremy, working across industries from public sector to technology. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Alex and Jeremy. So I'm Dustin Shimmick. I am product manager for Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau, which we will be showing you a little demo of later in the session after our presentation. That's a little bonus that you didn't get if you were at TC out in Las Vegas. So looking forward to that. My career has consisted of data. Most recently, I was director of analytics for a company called Masterlock right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yes, I'm a cheesehead. Yes, I like the Packers. But glad to be with Wiiisdom. And we'll show you the tool later in the session. It's going to be fun.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to discuss a series of problems that many of us have suffered from for just way too long. We're going to talk about the problem of missed errors in Tableau dashboards. We're going to talk about the problem of not having enough time to thoroughly test dashboards to catch those errors before they become risks or costly mistakes for you or your organization. We're also going to discuss the problem, of the Wild West, right? How do you know of all of the content that is out there on Tableau Cloud or Tableau Server? How do you know what content and what data sources and what dashboards are accurate, which are reliable, which are no kidding, recently updated? Obviously, this won't just be a commiseration session, though we will spend some time on that because I think it's vital for the healing process. We're going to talk about and show you solutions, including how to automate Tableau and BI testing and streamline your analytics governance workflows. So here's the spoiler. The solution has everything to do with this emerging concept known as analytics ops, and we're going to talk about what that means. And as Dustin said, we're going to show you what that looks like in practice. So without further ado, let's zip off to the next slide. Testing stuff. It's a part of who we are, right? As children, we learned about the world by dipping our toes into the proverbial water. What is this? Is it hot? Is it cold? Will it bring me joy or will it cause me harm? As a father of 2 children, 1, 3, 1, 5, I can assure you that these are, essential questions, right? To both infants and toddlers, questions that are asked with every new experience. We ask similar questions as adults. I love, wine tasting. I live in Northern Virginia, and there's a fantastic little wine store in downtown Front Royal. Go off to the next slide for me, Dustin. Every month, they bring in wines from all over the world. Together, we test the wine. We taste the wine to learn about it. Ah, yes, this has hints of, vanilla or blackberries or grapefruit or whatever. More fundamentally, we test the wine to see if we like it. If we do, we buy a bottle or two. If we don't like it, whatever, that's life. You move on to the next. As a people, boy, testing has been a big part of our lives for the past few years. You were required to take a COVID test, before attending a conference, before entering a building and traveling internationally. None of us like getting a COVID test. That Q-tip, brain tickle that we put ourselves through was incredibly uncomfortable, but we did it anyways because we wanted to keep each other safe and slow the spread of COVID. Testing stuff, it's also a part of your professional life, right? As data and analytics professionals, we want to know with absolute certainty that our data sources and our dashboards are 100% accurate and totally reliable for decision makers. Again, our stakeholders, they expect nothing less because they're using these assets to make decisions, to take action, to drive business value. The stakes are high, and so we hold ourselves and each other accountable for delivering perfection. Perfection, though, is really, really, really hard to achieve. You have to test a lot of stuff to be able to say a dashboard is 100% accurate and completely reliable. First and foremost, you have to test for accuracy, right? For example, do the numbers in the viz match those in the underlying data source? And what about when you apply a filter or trigger a dashboard action, you get all sorts of new numbers? Do those numbers also match? Second, you have to run user experience tests, simulating stuff like user journeys to validate that all filters, parameters, viz objects, and other Tableau features are working as expected. Security is obvious for essential reasons. And what about performance? Your dashboard could be totally accurate. Your dashboard could be functionally sound, but nobody is going to know that those two conditions are met if the dashboard takes 10 or more minutes to load. Stress testing. Admins care about this a lot. Does your analytics environment have enough juice to handle growing demand? There's only one way to know for sure. You need to stress test your analytics environment, on occasion to see how it performs under extreme load conditions. And we aren't done. We have regression testing. When you promote content to another, project or site or do something to the data source on which that workbook is built, you want to ensure that that change didn't compromise the viz itself. So when you run a regression test, what you're essentially doing is you're validating that your Tableau content is the same both before and after whatever that event was. Now, to say tests need to be run all day, every day, this is not hyperbolic because this is the production cadence that many of us follow. Click through the next slide if you wouldn't mind, Dustin. All day, every day, you are creating analytics and reports for business stakeholders, testing for accuracy, user experience, security, performance. It's all a part of the job. It always needs to happen. We also need to run these tests in the context of strategic IT initiatives, such as a database migration, a Tableau upgrade, a Tableau server to cloud migration, or even ongoing maintenance of your analytics environment. As I mentioned previously, all of us have experienced disruption caused by any number of these events. You weren't supposed to lose access to that dashboard, but you did because testing wasn't as thorough as it should have been. Speaking of outages, let's talk about the risks of not running tests for these scenarios. Operationally, many of us have been in that situation that I just described where an upgrade or a database migration took place and then suddenly nobody could access all of their content. Something went wrong. Financial and compliance risk, Google calculation errors, and you will land on countless stories about how the smallest of errors led to really big losses for an organization. Reputational. How many of you have pushed, and I would love to see some comments on this, how many of you have pushed a dashboard to a stakeholder that mistakenly contained an error or two? You didn't catch it, but I'm sure your stakeholder did. And then what about opportunity, cost, and trust? In 2021, Gartner put out a stat that basically went like this. On average, data and analytics leaders were spending about 10% of their organization's revenue on data and analytics initiatives. Now, when people are repeatedly exposed to and burned by risk, they act counter to what those investments are supposed to deliver. They adopt old behavior. They reestablish data silos, that they can basically manage by themselves. They rely on data downloads for reporting. This only further increases the risk exposure for the organization across all of these different categories. Now, moving on to the second chapter of the story, validation is important. Hopefully I've sold you on this, but it's obviously insufficient in and of itself. Let me tell you why. Tableau Blueprint, I love Tableau Blueprint. Going back to my intro, like I said, I spent a lot of time with Tableau Blueprint when I was at Tableau. Blueprint provides a roadmap for organizations to expand and optimize their use of data. It is filled, to the brim with processes and best practices related to strategy work, related to data literacy, as well as processes and best practices related to governance. Let's take a look at that. The section on content governance specifically addresses the problem that we're talking about here. Blueprint states that validation is important, yes, but it must be followed by promotion and certification. Promotion, it refers to the task that you take on to move that, fully validated content to another location. That could be a production project. It could be a production site. It kind of depends on what your infrastructure is, but you're moving it to a production place. Now, you do this because you want to keep the in-progress stuff, the stuff that you're working on, and the fully validated, ready-to-go stuff separate. You don't want stakeholders to use that half-baked stuff or that in-progress stuff or that half-baked analysis, as it were, or an incomplete report to make decisions, and so you keep them separate. Certification refers to the boxes that you check so that way stakeholders know of all of the content that's in that production project or that production site, which is not only accurate, but is also recent and therefore reliable for decision making. BI content, like bread, it goes stale, right? Circumstances change, questions change, requirements change. Without certification, it's really difficult to know of all of that production content out there, which is, no kidding, still good to go. So in sum, let me show you a little diagram. Here's what we have here. Before you develop a dashboard, you collect requirements. During validation, you test your dashboard to ensure that all of those requirements have been met. Then you promote that content to a production project. Finally, you certify it. Simple, right? Well, yes, but unfortunately, time is precious, especially for analysts who are inundated with requests for help. Let me show you what happens. There aren't enough hours to keep up with the backlog of analytics and reporting needs while also ensuring that that content is fully validated and governed. So people skip steps. They don't have time to complete validation. They don't have time to test the dashboard or that report for accuracy and performance. They need to get the content into the hands of their stakeholders just as fast as practically possible. And so they skip validation entirely or in large part. Certification is also skipped. Now stakeholders have no way of knowing what content is accurate, what content is recent, what content is reliable. It's on them to figure it out for themselves. What happens when we skip these steps? Well, we covered this already. We increase the risk exposure for the organization across all of those categories like financial, reputational, and so on and so forth. So what are we to do? Are we to accept risk to just be this untouchable thing? No. At Wiiisdom, we have seen countless organizations eliminate their risk exposure by testing, promoting, and certifying BI content, their Tableau content, at scale. And that's what these next few slides are all about, at scale. Let's take a look at the data value real quickly. To produce business value, data must move from collection to action, passing through storage, processing, and analysis. On paper, this looks so simple, right? Move your data from A to B to C, bing, bang, boom, done. We all know that this is not the case. Each step in this process is an aggregate of many, 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 many little steps. And without governance, these many, 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 many little steps can produce big, big, big problems. I didn't want to lean into that too much. It's a little hokey, but they can produce really big problems, right? That's why stuff like data ops exists. Data ops aims to improve data reliability and integrity by really orchestrating and automating data integration and processing pipelines. Data engineers love data ops because it adds a little governance and a bit of rigor to an otherwise very chaotic process. But do you ever notice that when people are talking about data ops, they refer to it as a practice that almost ends with processing. In other words, data ops gets you to, like a silver or a gold layer in Databricks or a materialized view in Snowflake, and, sort of that's that, right? That really feels insufficient, especially when you consider there's a whole series of things that happen after that point, right? Data undergoes a bit more transformation to meet the needs of the business. People create calculations in Tableau. The list goes on and on and on. That is where analytics ops fits in. Analytics ops is an emerging methodology that effectively applies principles from DevOps, data ops, ML ops, all of the ops to the cycle of analysis with a focus on automation. Analytics ops aims to really just build trust in data and analytics and increase confidence in data-driven decision-making by streamlining the development, testing, deployment, and monitoring processes for analytics and dashboards/reports. It is best thought of as the final mile of data ops, taking all of that CI/CD goodness just a little bit further for the benefit of all of those things that are happening in your analytics layer. Now, I could drone on about this for hours, but honestly, that's not the best way to learn. So what I wanted to do is just set a foundation on which my good friends Dustin and Alex can build. They are now going to show you what analytics ops looks like and simultaneously deliver a masterclass in acting. So without further ado, gentlemen, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Now, I want to jump into a completely hypothetical story to a hypothetical Tableau user that certainly doesn't exist in reality. Meet Dustin. This is Dustin Data. He is the sales operations analyst at Generique, and he is a legend in his organization. When the sales team needs to move in an agile manner, when they need to learn something new, when they need to ask a question that will drive the momentum of their business forward, Dustin is their go-to guy. He is a legend in Tableau. He has worked hard to build his skill set, build his reputation, to do this big job, but it's a big job that he loves. He is happy to hold the weight of his sales org on his shoulders. He is in charge of the content creation and creativity of his sales operations deployment of Tableau. There's a dedicated quality assurance team that's in charge of the governance. So the maintenance and everything else that goes on is ultimately not Dustin's responsibility. That is until one day when he gets a Slack message. That's right, a Slack message. Not even a courtesy call from his manager, but a simple written message saying something quite small, but its impact will be quite large. Dustin is no longer in charge of the dashboard creation of his content only. He is now, in addition to his primary responsibility, in charge of the governance of his content as well. That means testing. That means making sure the user experience is consistent. That means making sure data is fresh and up to date while handling everything else in his day job. But it's okay. Dustin's happy to take on the added responsibility to make sure his team is successful. But over time, a pattern starts to unfold. And indeed, Dustin's is rewarded off of his output, off of handling the number of change requests from the sales org, off of creating brand new content to answer business questions. And with his skill that he's been able to rely on, there's nothing too bad that happens. So whether intentionally or unintentionally, Dustin does what he's trained to do. He prioritizes his time. And that means focusing on his incentives, creating new content and updating old content, and less about the validation and certification and overall governance of content. Again, not a huge deal. There's nothing inherently bad about this in the beginning, but over time, this pattern starts to become more and more clear. In fact, it starts with a quick message from account executive. Do you know why the forecast numbers look different in Salesforce? This was sent to one of Dustin's team members, but it gets forwarded to him as the go-to guy. And it's not just account executive, it's actual sales leadership giving vague but important complaints that dashboards are broken or the numbers are not consistent. So now instead of being proactive, Dustin has to be reactive, constantly putting out fires while his ticket backlog, his day job, continues to grow. Dustin's put himself in this really difficult situation. But overall, he's going to work through it. He's going to keep putting out these fires. There hasn't been a major impact to the business itself yet, just Dustin's frustration. That is, until he takes a look at his admin views on Tableau. And Dustin sees the main measure of his value, how and when people are interacting with his data, has a sharp decline. Devastating. This is how Dustin can see whether or not what he produces every single day is actually worth something to someone. Truly terrible. And as Dustin reflects on this, he's about to get a call.
Gosh, I can't believe that our engagement with all the dashboards we have published out there is dropping off. I mean, we've worked so hard to build all these dashboards. We've worked day and night to get people using them, training them on it. To see it just fall off like that, it's like a knife through my heart. But fortunately, you know what? I'm the data hero at our company, just like Alex said. And I've been working on this new dashboard that's going to help our company get out of a little crisis that we're in right now. And in fact, I just published it out a couple days ago, and it's already starting to make a big impact. Gotten some nice compliments about it, and I think our engagement is about to go back up. So I'll be back to being that data hero in no time. I guess my boss wants to talk to me about something, though. Let's hear what this is all about.
Say, Dustin, why don't you take a quick look at that? Yeah, show me that dashboard you just made.
Sure. Let me pull it right up here. It's got 47 tabs open with all the new responsibilities, but you know what? Let me pull it up. Okay, yep, there it is.
So I was looking at this morning. Glad you pushed this out, but I know for a fact that we don't have near this amount of inventory.
Gosh, he's right. We don't. You know what? Someone must not have refreshed the extract that was driving this dashboard. I don't know if that was supposed to be me or someone else on my team.
Well, your name is the one listed next to the data source, so I would assume it's your responsibility.
That's true. Ultimately, it really does land with me, boss.
Okay, well, the green check mark is there on Tableau. The data source is certified. Your name is next to it, yet it's not up to date. The sales team has been blasting my Slack with messages saying so much for trusted data sources.
Yeah, I know certified. The fact that the data source is certified really should mean something. In this case, it doesn't. I'm sorry. I'll get this updated as soon as I can.
Get it done, please.
Will do. What a soul-crushing moment that was. I mean, I'm used to being the data hero, not getting feedback like that. Someone actually took a picture of me right after that conversation, and this was it. I was laying on the ground. I didn't want to look at anybody. I didn't even want to be seen. It was so embarrassing. But fortunately, I was able to get myself up off the ground, dry the tears from my eyes, and get to work. I knew I had to find a better solution to manage all of this. So I went to Google, started looking around for tools and processes out there that could just help me better manage all these things, help me stop skipping the steps that we looked at earlier in the presentation. Fortunately, I found Wiiisdom. Now, I'll admit, I was a little embarrassed that I didn't know Wiiisdom existed. I mean, it could have done some of these things for me that I was just skipping, that I assumed I could cover on my own without any automation. So I put it in place, and I want to show you a few things that it can do in practice. Let's take a look. Okay, I'm going to step out of character, and what I am going to do is I am going to show you a demo of some of the functionality in Wiiisdom very quickly, and then I will turn it back to my wonderful colleague, Jeremy, who will wrap down the presentation. And remember, we will be doing a giveaway at the end where we'll give away this book. Also, if you have questions, please do put them in the comments. We are saving a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So definitely, if you joined halfway through the presentation and you didn't hear my prompt at the beginning, please do be sure to put your questions directly in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Okay, so we are in Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau. I mentioned that I could have used Wiiisdom to fill in for some of those gaps in my processes, once I had to take over analytics governance, in addition to actually building out the content. Let's take a look at some of these things actually are. So as Jeremy mentioned, we can actually automate the evaluation of our data for accuracy that's in our dashboards. And I want to show you a couple examples of how we can do that. Now, we have a ton of functionality in Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau. We are always happy to talk about it. We're always glad to have coffee with you if you'd like to talk about it, but I'm going to show you just a few pieces of the core functionality now around accuracy. The first is asserting that our SQL statements are accurate and that the data that is returned from a SQL statement is actually loading in a dashboard that we have. So I'm going to show you this first task that we have in Wiiisdom that allows us to put a SQL query into a SQL editor, validate that the SQL is actually correct, and then connect to the database that we want to execute that SQL query against, and also select a worksheet in a Tableau dashboard, and then run this task and ensure that the results of this SQL query match what we have, the data that we have loaded into our dashboard. And we've set up several tasks here where I've got several different SQL queries. We're running these against the same data source and checking the results that's appearing in each dashboard or the data that's loading into each dashboard. And what happens is we get a report after we run this task that shows us whether or not that task passed or not. So were the results of the SQL query, did they match the data that was loaded into the dashboard? And you can see that for our first and third here, there were some issues. So the results of the SQL query, the data that was returned did not match what was loaded into the dashboard. So that is a red flag. We want to know about that as an analytics leader or a dashboard administrator. And then you can see a couple others did pass. That's these green check marks right here. Now we can also see the time duration that it took to run each of these tasks. I'm going to show you where that comes into play for user experience in a couple minutes. Another thing that we can do to perform checks on the accuracy of our data is by using a task that we call data validation. And what we can do here is put together a set of rules that we want to run in the test and see if the data in the dashboard meets them. So for the example that I have up here, what I have done is set up a few tasks where I can check on a number of things in the data that's loaded in the dashboard. I can check to make sure that the number of rows of data that's loaded equals a certain number, as an example. In this case, I've said, pass this test if the number of rows of data in the dashboard is 17 rows. If it's not, then it fails. In this second part of this test, I've said, check to make sure that the subcategory that always contains the value phones. If it doesn't, the test fails. And then for this last part, I've put a formula in, and this is where the functionality gets really powerful. You can actually put customized formulas in here to perform checks on the accuracy of the data in your dashboard. I've put a formula in here to check to make sure that a certain value never goes over a certain percentage threshold. So if you have, practically speaking, you have a column with data in it that should never have a value that exceeds a certain percentage threshold, that's something that you can test for. Now, there's all kinds of formulas you can put together in here to perform tests like that. So you can imagine the power of this. There's almost unlimited permutations here of things you can check for in terms of data accuracy in your dashboard, but that's just one. And so when I group these things together, I've got a group of things that are important to me for this given dashboard that I'm testing. I'm checking to make sure the rows of data that are loaded in, it's always 17 rows. It's always a certain number of rows. I'm checking to make sure that I always have a certain value in one column in there. I'm checking to make sure that, a percentage that I have never exceeds a certain threshold. And the list can go on and on and on and on. And again, just like what I showed you with the SQL validation, you can see here if each of these tasks pass and how long it took for them to run. Okay, those are just a couple examples of the powerful functionality that Wiiisdom has around accuracy testing. Now let's talk a little bit about user experience, because that's critical as well to maintain trust in your dashboards, right? Let's take a look at what we can do for user experience testing. Now, I'm just going to give you a very small sample of some of the types of tests that we can run on user experience. We can, as an example, test to make sure that we can select certain values in a filter. And so in this example, what I've done is I have put 3 different filters into a test, and I have put in the values that I would like to be selected in that filter. And so in this case, I'm looking at a filter that has region values. And down here, I've put in 2 different values that should always be able to be selected, West and Central. Okay. And then I've done the same thing for a category filter. I've put in furniture and office supplies. We always want to make sure we can select those. Same thing for a ship mode, first class and standard. And then I've added some tasks to test that there's a map in this dashboard. I want to be able to test that a certain state can always be selected. And I've wanted to be able to test for the fact that I can switch between one tab in my dashboard. This dashboard has multiple tabs at the top in our Tableau cloud. You can switch between one tab and the other. This particular test checks to make sure that I can switch over to the tab that I've put here called KPIs only. And when I run this test, it's actually Wiiisdom is going to open up the dashboard, test all of these things. And then once it's completed and passed or failed, I'm going to get a report on what exactly passed and what exactly failed. So I'm going to close out this second window that opened, but you can see Wiiisdom is actually going through, making sure that you can open up the visualization, making sure that you can set the filter to all those values that I showed. And then once these things pass, we'll go through and get a report that shows not only whether they passed or failed, but how much time it took to actually do these things, like setting filters. How long did it take to set those values? So it's doing performance testing as well on the actual experience the user is having. Now, when I go over here, I can see that my test passed in my reports. I can see that it took 2.2 seconds to set the values I put in the region filter, 2.7 seconds to apply the category values, so on and so forth. You can actually see here, this is pretty powerful stuff. Not only were we able to apply these values in the filter, that's the green check marks that you see, but how long did it take? So if a user is doing this, how long is it taking them to apply certain values and get the data back loaded in the dashboard? We're testing for user experience, both are things functionally working and how much time is it taking for those things to happen. So pretty cool stuff, pretty powerful stuff around user experience. Now, Jeremy also mentioned automated data source certification. Now, what we can do is, and what I could have done in the case of that little skit that we did, was I could have set up all of the tests that we need to do, accuracy, user experience, et cetera, on our dashboard, and then automatically certify the Tableau data source if those tests pass. And if they didn't pass, we could have automatically decertified the data source. Would have been nice for me to be able to do that in my situation that Alex and I just walked through. So let me go back to our data validation test. This is where, you remember, I was checking for the number of rows of data that were loaded in the dashboard, whether or not there was a certain value in a category, whether or not, we had percentages within a certain threshold, things like that. What I could do is, along with adding all the user experience tests into this same test, is I could set up what we're calling a post-process action. You can see this little yellow new circle right here. We just debuted this at Tableau Conference 2023. And what I could do is have all of my tests run on accuracy, user experience, et cetera. And if they all pass, we could automatically certify the data source in Tableau Cloud, okay, or Tableau Server. And now, same thing, if they don't pass, we can decertify the data source, okay? So this one passed. It sent the certification message to our data source, and I'm just going to show you in Tableau Cloud very quickly. Let me log in. Actually, you know what? Automatically logged out. So I'm not going to show you that in Tableau Cloud. But if we logged into Tableau Cloud, what we would see is the green check mark for Tableau data source certification, along with this message appearing again, if it passed. If it did not pass, we would see that check mark removed, and we would see this message on decertification there. So all automatable. We can set up the tasks and tests we want to run and automatically certify and decertify a data source based upon the results of those tests and tasks. Pretty cool. Now, I do want to show you another type of test. We talked about functional tests. We talked about accuracy testing, user experience, automated data source certification. I want to talk about regression tests. So if you are going to be going through a migration, you are going to be upgrading the version of Tableau you're on, you're going through some event where you want to take a look at what your dashboards look at before that event occurred and what they look like after, you're going to be interested in our regression tests. Okay, so let's imagine for a moment that we have 21 dashboards we manage. Okay, I have selected 21 of those for this test, and what I am going to get in a regression test is a report of before and after that event took place. Were there any changes to the dashboard? Does it look different? Are the filters changed? Is there different data? Things like this. There's actually 11 checks that we do on the dashboard. I'm going to show you an example of what the reports look like. So here's one of the 21 dashboards that I did my regression test on. And you can see you get an image of what it looked like before and what it looked like after. And these red highlights are showing things that changed between the initial snapshot of the dashboard that was taken before the event and what it looked like after. So again, you're seeing the red highlighting the changes between the two. Now, if we go to check data summary, you're going to actually get a snapshot of what the data looked like before and after. And you'll get a preview here showing some of the differences in the data if it was different. In this case, it was. So it's showing me that with this red coloration here that we failed, or there was some difference between the two versions. Okay, so we get a preview of some of the things that look different between the two, the before and after. And then what I also have the opportunity to do is open the complete data set before and the complete after, which is really powerful because then you can actually do some analysis on your own. What did the data look like beforehand? What did it look like after? See what the differences were. Help you address and proactively troubleshoot any problems with your dashboards. Now you can see there was also things that passed. Our columns were the same. Our filters stayed put, things like that. Looks like the filter values changed. So that would be something we want to look at. Again, there's 11 checks, very robust, that take place between comparing the baseline versus the snapshot taken after the event, migration, upgrade, things like that. So that is a regression test. Again, put any questions you have into the comments. Excuse me, I see a few in there. Glad to address these in our Q&A here in maybe 10 minutes or so. Okay, a couple other things that I do want to touch on. I'm going to go back to our data validation. You may say, Dustin, okay, this is really cool, but do I have to go in and run all of these tests one at a time, on a one-off basis whenever I want to execute them? And the answer is no. You can schedule these and automate the running of all of these tests. We actually make this really easy. I went back into one of my tests here, the data validation one. If I click on schedule, you're going to have that available to you. Click on schedule. If you have a task scheduling tool, if you're using Windows, you have Windows Task Scheduler. You can go in and copy this right here, paste it in there, and go ahead and schedule your tests to run automatically using the scheduler on whatever cadence you want. Say you want to run every test that you've built, every functional test you've built on data accuracy and user experience. You want to run those every day at 8 a.m. Go ahead and set them up using Task Scheduler and using the functionality I just showed you. We also have several integrations. So if I go over to the integration tab right here, one of my favorites is we have an integration with PostgreSQL. Let me know in the comments if anyone is using Postgres. But what you can do is you can actually set up a Postgres database and capture data on all of the tests that you're performing in Wiiisdom in that database. And then you can do cool stuff like, since you're all Tableau folks, connect that data to a dashboard. I've built actually a sample template that we make available publicly. If you take a look at our YouTube channel or you take a look at our release notes, you can see a link to this. And there's also a video on how to set it up if you'd like. But in dashboards like this and using that data from Postgres, you can see some really cool stuff like, okay, what tests recently failed? I see a bunch failed 2 days ago. What dashboards did those tests fail on? What were the tests that failed? In this case, it looks like there were some SQL tests that failed 2 days ago. I can then go ahead and click into that dashboard and see what's going on with it, do some investigation. So another way to rapidly identify issues in your dashboards. Imagine as an admin or an analytics manager setting up a view like this, being able to quickly see when there were failures, what they were, which views they were in, and then click into those views and do some analysis right away. This is very, very powerful stuff. All right, I'm going to go back to the integrations. You can also set up integrations with email, with Slack, with anything using webhooks, Rollbar. You can get prompts on, were there tests that succeeded? Were there tests that failed? So some very, very powerful integrations here. There are a couple comments coming in here. We will take a look at those at the end, but I am going to turn it back over to my wonderful colleague, Jeremy, at this point, who I believe has a few slides to close with.
Yeah. Awesome. Excuse me. Awesome demo there, Dustin. Yeah, let's recap quickly because honestly, I see some really great questions and I would love to spend some time walking through those. So just to recap, again, you saw how easy it is to test for accuracy with Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau. With a few clicks, we've eliminated the guesswork, right? Now Dustin knows that the data displayed in his Tableau dashboard is 100% accurate, no question about it. It matches the underlying data source. How about user experience stuff, right? We saw how easy it is to simulate those user journeys, those very comprehensive, if you would go to the next slide, please, those very comprehensive user journeys and validate the functionality of filters, parameters, and so on and so forth. With Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau, Dustin was able to prevent bothersome errors, which we've all experienced from occurring, restoring trust in data and analytics products. And then finally, we have data source certification. A lot of content lives on Tableau, even in your production project or production site. And it's sometimes really difficult to separate the stuff that's really accurate and from the stuff that is recent and therefore reliable, right? By adding data source certification as a post-test process, Dustin is effectively helping his stakeholders cut through the noise so that way they have confidence in using that data source for self-service, for self-serve analysis. Everybody can be like Dustin, right? If you adopt a validation, promotion, and certification process and find a way to scale these processes. Jump to the next slide, Dustin. That second point around scale is really the most critical, right? And that's where analytics ops fits in. Again, we really appreciate everybody joining us today. You've been really great with all the comments that you've posted. Thanks so much for joining us. Now let's open it up to questions. So let me hand it right back over to you, Dustin, and let's take some questions. Maybe we can bring all of us up.
Yes, for sure. I'll bring up Alex as well. Let me bring off the presentation, and here we are.
Right.
Might go there. How about that?
Good.
Okay,
Looks
cool.
good.
Okay. All right. So we do have some questions. Thank you, everyone. And be sure, again, stick around until the end. We're going to do a giveaway very shortly. Lost my book in the shuffles here, but we're going to be giving this away. And we'll give you the instructions in just a few moments. But so stick around for that. We do have a first question from Serena Nelson. Is all of this functionality available with Tableau Server? So there's the product is for, this is a desktop application. It's for Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau. This is for Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server. So overwhelming majority, yes, is for both. There is going to be some minor differences, for example, using connected apps to log in for authentication with Tableau Cloud as an example. But I'll turn it over to, oops, I'm pointing in the wrong direction. I don't know if Alex or Jeremy, you want to talk about this, or if you're okay with my answer.
I don't know.
It was a great answer.
Who's being pointed to who right now? But I would.
I know
Alex,
I'm looking this way, and when the finger goes the different.
Who's talking to who? Off to this is me living a Brady Bunch nightmare. Off to Alex.
Mhm.
No, it was a perfect answer, Dustin. Yes, we have more or less full parity between Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server when it comes to using Wisdom Ops for Tableau. We're happy to talk with you about any nuance that may or may not be relevant to you. I think the next question in the queue,
Mhm.
if I may move forward, is Wisdom for on-prem only. So you can install Wisdom on anything from a laptop to a server box, including a virtual server box on something like AWS. So in that sense, we are cloud compatible. You just need some hardware to install Wisdom on, physical or virtual.
Okay. And then Serena had a question as well. Can you share the Tableau dashboard again or give us a link to the template? So what I will do is I will go into the comments both on YouTube and LinkedIn after the event and put a direct link to the dashboard template in there. It's also, if you take a look at the release notes for Wiiisdom, I'll put a link to those as well in that same comment. They're linked to there. And the other thing is you can see all the cool stuff we released for the TC23 conference. We also have a video on how to set up that dashboard as well as Postgres with Wiiisdom out on our YouTube channel. Why not? Good things come in threes. I guess I'll add the link to the YouTube video as well. But I'll put all these in the comments, and I'll be sure to tag you, Sarita, especially, just so that you can be sure to get that. But everyone will have visibility to it. Great question. And then Roy is asking if there is a Spanish version of the software. Not 100% sure on all the language compatibility, but this is something that we can definitely get back to you, unless Jeremy or Alex, you want to take that. I think we'll follow up with you on this question. It's a good question, and we'll follow up for sure to you either directly or in the comments. And then, yes, there is a YouTube channel with lots of good stuff out there. Be sure to definitely take a look at that. Why don't we get into the giveaway? Do we want to do the giveaway? I don't see any other questions unless you guys did.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go back and pull my screen up here. All right, what I want everyone to do is type in the chat #analyticsops. And as you do that, you are going to automatically enter into the giveaway. So all you have to do is enter #analyticsops. And as you do that, you can provide feedback on the session. You can say, hey, this was great. Hey, this was terrible. #analyticsops. We would love to hear what you thought, we can do better. Keep asking questions too. Quite frankly, we're always around, on LinkedIn or email to answer your questions, but type in #analyticsops, and we will the tool will automatically enter you into the giveaway. So I'm going to give this about a minute or two and let you type that in. And actually, as we collect these, I did see a good question that I am willing to bet one of my esteemed colleagues has some thoughts on. What are your thoughts on how we can make it part of the dashboard development process? Currently, it's not a proactive process rather than reactive process when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I bet you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I can offer some thoughts, and then certainly if you or Alex wants to chime in, please do so. But here's my thoughts on where all of this fits in. It certainly fits into the development process, right? I collect requirements from my stakeholders. I go off, I build my dashboard. Before I take that dashboard and re-deliver it to my stakeholders, I want to fully vet this thing to make sure it's accurate, functional, performant, blah, 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 right? You need to do a series of tests, a whole lot of tests as a part of what I just described to make sure that when it lands in your stakeholders' lap, it's good to go. But obviously, we know that things go bump once they've hit production. Just the other day internally, we were having a conversation about all of the things that could happen that could cause a previously vetted dashboard that now lives in production to suddenly error out, right? Maybe a column name changed in the underlying data source. Maybe the column data type changed. Maybe now there's an extra space where there was previously an underscore. Maybe there was a change on the database side and some configuration impacted things downstream. I mean, the list of circumstances that could cause a dashboard to go off the rails, so to speak, even once it's in production, the list is lengthy. And so it's not just sufficient to test as a part of the development process. You also need to continuously test and monitor those dashboards once they're in production. That's obviously a very time-consuming process, right? What are you going to do? Every single day, go onto Tableau's server, look into your dashboards and sort of like, quickly filter everything in a bunch of different ways and evaluate, just all the content to make sure it's totally good to go. No, nobody has time for that. That's where automated continuous testing comes into play, and that's exactly what we deliver. So it's a good question. Any thoughts to add, Dustin, Alex?
Just that there's a lot of different ways to operationalize this, right? We think that maybe the most classic example is segregated Tableau environments, and that might mean different sites. It might mean different projects, but put simply, it means you should create a dashboard in a development environment and then publish it to a test environment before publishing to the production environment. And that test environment may or may not have Wiiisdom running on top of it. It might be a manual human test. Of course, we recommend the software to test at scale, but ultimately, that's how you can avoid reactive issues in a production environment, is by being proactive and building testing into your publishing process by having distinct environments so that no error ever actually enters the production environment.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both Jeremy and Alex said. I think back to my days of managing analytics, for an organization. And I think, think about, sketch out kind of, what are the things that you want to make sure you can test for proactively? What are the things that you don't ever want a user to experience? You don't ever want to go wrong. It would be really detrimental if A, B, and C happened. And then, we can help you with Wiiisdom build out those tests for those elements. And then we can, as Jeremy and Alex both alluded to, we can actually automate the testing for those things. And then you can set up a dashboard, just like what I showed, that can show you when any of those things that you don't ever want to have happen. And you know what? You can also sleep a heck of a lot better at night, because you'll see in the dashboard, a heck of a lot of green if those tests are passing all of the time and there's no failures. And so there's two sides to it, right? You can have confidence when you've gone through the rigor of setting up those tests, you're doing the automated test runs of them. And when you're seeing them all pass, you can say to your boss, you can say, hey, you know what? We've got this in place, and these tests have all passed today, and we do have confidence in what's put out there. I think there's definitely a organizational satisfaction and trust and personal satisfaction element to that as well. And then when they fail, now you're going to see it right away. You're proactive about investigating whatever needs to be resolved. You're not hearing from a key stakeholder 5 days later that's angry because, they just went into a customer meeting or something and they didn't have the dashboard that they were expecting to be working, and then that customer meeting fell apart, for example. So I think you think about what it is that you want to test for, you build the automation around it, and then, you have either peace of mind or some proactiveness from being able to see, what is passing or what is failing on a daily basis. All right, cool. I'm going to go to the giveaway tool here again, pull this question off. And I think we've got all of the entries in. We've had more time than I was expecting to give. So I'm going to go ahead and click draw. Everyone's name is going to spin around that entered the giveaway.
Oh, this is so exciting.
I know, right? The winner is going to get this book, Competing on Analytics. The winner is Demarius Puig. Demarius, please reach out to me on LinkedIn after the event, or you can email me, dustin.chemick@wiiisdom.com. And let me know you were the winner, and we will be sure to get this book to you. Okay. There are a couple of things, since we have a few minutes left, that we wanted to make you aware of. We do have some events coming up. One is on June 28th. This is going to be at 10 a.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. London time. Myself and the other presenter are split between Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and London, which it will happen to be 10 a.m. in Milwaukee and 4 p.m. in London. But obviously, will be streamed right here, available globally. We are going to be giving updates on Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau, functionality we released at Tableau Conference, new functionality we have coming up, a preview of our roadmap for the product. We're also going to get into an applied use case or two for, a business user that's using Wiiisdom Ops, show them how to set up some tests around a really practical example. And this is something that we plan on doing every quarter. So we're super excited about that. We're also going to give you the opportunity to provide us with feedback on what you think about the features that we just released, what you think about the features that are coming up, and where you would like to see this product go. So it's an opportunity for you to help us shape Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau, which I'm really excited about personally as product manager for the product. All right, there's some others that Jeremy is going to, or actually one other that Jeremy is going to tell us about.
I'm
yes, we can hear you.
I was confused there. Yeah. So, what we're going to be doing going forward is every couple of months running a Discovering Wiiisdom Ops for Tableau webinar. Think of this as a 30-minute down and dirty description of what do we do? What is the value that we're providing? What is the problem that we're solving? Followed up with a live product demo. So the first of this is coming up the week of the second week of July. So July 13, we're having one that is Eastern, US friendly, in other words, and then we have another just a couple of days prior. So yeah, please join us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Very cool. Awesome. And thank you to the Wiiisdom marketing team for dropping the links to both of these events in the comments. So you can go ahead and if you're in the event, click directly on those to register for either of those events. All right, cool. So I appreciate the feedback from everyone. Looks like some positive comments. So definitely like it. Let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see in future events. We always love to hear from folks. So with that, I think we are at the end of our session. Do any of you guys have anything that you would like to add?
No, nothing.
Silence is golden. All right, cool. There is a question from Serena regarding pricing. We can certainly reach out to Serena, to you after. I don't know if either of you guys want to take the opportunity to take this question now, or we should follow up after.
Sure, Serena, our pricing is not on our website because we like to work with each individual client and put together a package for them based on their needs. So I'm happy to reach out offline and let's talk more. But thank you everyone so much for your time today, Serena and everyone else included. Thank you, Wiiisdom marketing team. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.